Welcome to this video about the SEEBURGER API Gateway and API management in SEEBURGER iPaaS. Modern business integration goes far beyond classic EDI. Today, companies need real-time data exchange with SaaS solutions, IoT platforms, and digital partners. They also need a secure and controlled way to expose APIs to customers, suppliers, and internal teams without losing control over access, performance, or compliance. At the same time, modern integration requires the coexistence of classic EDI and API-based communication. Both must operate side by side, unified under one platform. SEEBURGER iPaaS simplifies this hybrid landscape, providing a single environment where all integration types come together seamlessly. It also enables partner self-service, so business partners can onboard faster, discover APIs, and integrate more flexibly, all within a governed and secure framework. This is where the SEEBURGER API Gateway becomes essential. It provides a single secure entry point for all APIs, ensuring that your digital ecosystem runs smoothly and reliably. To support this, SEEBURGER's API management is built around 3 dedicated applications. It's the API Manager app for providing APIs, the API Catalog app for discovering and consuming APIs, and the API Monitor app for analyzing usage and performance. These apps are complemented by the User Management Service application, which controls organizations, user accounts, and business service assignments. Together, they provide a complete environment for securely publishing, managing, and consuming APIs. In this video, we will go step by step through the API Lifecycle. So first, the roles in the API Lifecycle, preparing the environment in the User Management app after that, then providing an API in the API Manager, consuming the API in the API Catalog, and monitor APIs with the operator role. As part of the SEEBURGER iPaaS, the API Gateway is seamlessly integrated into our hybrid integration platform. It works hand in hand with the classic EDI engine, combining the world of traditional B2B messaging and modern API connectivity. Both EDI and API traffic are handled through separate dedicated routes to ensure performance and reliability. All requests pass through a highly available, load-balanced infrastructure operated by SEEBURGER, so scalability and resilience come built in. For our customers, each API environment runs under secure and branded domain, managed entirely by SEEBURGER. TLS certificates and updates are handled automatically, giving your APIs a professional identity without additional effort on your side. With this foundation, SEEBURGER iPaaS provides the perfect environment to securely publish, manage, and consume APIs right alongside your existing B2B and EDI processes. So before we dive into the API management apps, let's take a moment to look at the roles involved. In SEEBURGER iPaaS, we differentiate between 2 kinds of roles: the administrative roles in the user management and the functional roles in the API Lifecycle. The corporate group administrator manages all organizations inside a corporate group. They can create or update organizations, assign organization administrators, and control which business services are available, such as API Manager, Catalog, and Monitor. The organization administrator manages a single organization. With Deleg Admin restricted as a business service, they can add users, assign them to the API audiences, and invite them into the API Catalog. The functional roles are the API publisher, who provides APIs by importing them and then creating API products. The API consumer, who represents both the user and the application consuming an API. So the user logs into the API Catalog app, discovers and requests an API product, and retrieves secure credentials. These credentials are then configured in the target system, for example an ERP or CRM application, which technically becomes the actual consumer of the API. And the API operator monitors performance and usage to ensure reliable operation. As you can see, these roles complement each other. Administrators manage the environment, while publishers, consumers, and operators work with the APIs. Together, these roles cover the full API lifecycle. I'll show you a slide with some more details here. A quick pause might help, in case you don't want to miss any of them. So let's now look at the user management configuration. First, I need the role of the corporate group administrator. Only with this role I can create and manage organizations within the corporate group. Each customer already has an initial organization, which is typically used for existing services such as classic EDI. To keep things clean, we now create a dedicated API consumer organization. This ensures that API usage remains separate from existing EDI operations and both environments can be managed independently. It is important to set the login context. This makes it possible to use the same email address in multiple organizations. Since two-factor authentication is used and the second factor is sent by email, this is an important setting. Next, we assign business services to this new organization. Business services are functional building blocks provided by SEEBURGER. They define which apps are available and which permissions can be used within the organization. Without assigning a business service, the corresponding app will not even be visible to the user. So if you'd like a deeper dive into self-service user management in the UMS, you can also watch our dedicated tutorial on YouTube. Just search for SEEBURGER UMS. From the service list provided by SEEBURGER, I activate the API Manager, the API Catalog, and the API Monitor, and, importantly, the Deleg Admin Restricted service. Deleg Admin Restricted is itself a business service. With it, the organization admin can later manage users within the consumer organization. Therefore, we must create a group and assign the necessary roles. Once the group is set up, I can create a user account to appoint an organization administrator. In this case, that is Libby Barnes. I send her an invitation to the portal and assign her to the group so that she has the necessary rights after logging in. Thanks to this previously assigned Deleg Admin Restricted rights, this organization admin can now create users, assign them to the appropriate API audiences or groups, and send invitations to the API catalog. When logging in for the first time after receiving the invitation, the user must first activate their account and enter the second factor at least once. It makes sense to register your browser as a trusted device here. The organization admin can create a group for the API consumer that contains the permissions to use the API Catalog app. We then also create Grace Hooper as an API consumer user account. At this stage, only the general business services such as API Manager, Catalog Monitor, and Deleg Admin Restricted are assigned. Additional API product-specific and audience-specific business services are automatically generated by the API Manager app when a publisher creates an API product or defines an audience. These new services appear in the UMS and become available to the consumer organization only in a later step, once the corresponding API product or audience exists. So with this basic setup complete, the environment is ready. In the next step, we will switch to the API Manager, where the publisher provides an API that can later be assigned to the consumer. This step involves multiple roles: the API publisher, the corporate group admin, and the organization admin. Inside the API Manager app, the publisher takes responsibility for making APIs available in a secure and controlled way. In the SEEBURGER iPaaS, the gateway groups and instances are provisioned and operated by SEEBURGER. The API publisher does not create or couple gateway instances. Instead, when deploying an API product, the publisher selects the appropriate pre-configured gateway group so that the API configuration is applied to the corrected, secured infrastructure. Next, the publisher imports an API definition, for example using Swagger, Open API or WSTL. The system distinguishes between two layers, the backend API, the real backend service connection including certificates, authentication or headers, and the API product, a proxy API exposed on the gateway. This is what external consumers see. It allows applying additional policies such as rate limits, authentication, or quotas without touching the backend. Once the backend API is configured and marked as available, the publisher creates an API product from it. Here, they apply policies such as authentication via UMS, rate limits or quotas, and even mock response if the backend is not yet ready. The publisher also defines an audience, a logical group of users or organizations who will be able to see and request the API in the catalog. An audience is technically backed by a role in the user management, so only assigned users will gain access. When the configuration is complete, the API publisher deploys the product to a gateway group in the API Manager app. The publisher then publishes the product by setting its status to public and linking it to the chosen audience. As you have seen, you can test the interface, define policies, set quotas, add a suitable icon, or specify appropriate text. Because there are so many possibilities here, I would like to refer you to the product documentation at this point. Now the API product passed on to the API using organization by assigning the corresponding business service to it. The corporate group administrator takes over in the UMS. They open the newly created business service, assign it to the previously created consumer organization, and confirm that the organization is now entitled to use the specific API product. Only after these assignments are completed, the API becomes fully accessible for the consumer in the API Catalog app. Since we have already assigned our sample API consumer Grace Hooper to the group, and the permission has now been extended to include the audience, Grace Hooper should be able to initiate an API request for one of our ERP-tagged APIs the next time she logs in. With these two steps, publisher in the API Manager and corporate group admin in the UMS, the API is live, secured and ready to be discovered by consumers. Once the API consumer, Grace Hooper here, logs into the API Catalog app, they can browse all available API products that have been published for their assigned audience. Each API comes with documentation, usage examples, and technical details about request and response formats. When the consumer selects an API product, they can request access directly from within the same screen. The system automatically validates their organization membership and audience assignment, and then forward the request to the API publisher for approval. The publisher receives a notification that a new access request has been submitted. The publisher reviews the request in the API Manager app, verifies the usage context, and can then grant access with a single click. Once access is granted, the system automatically notifies the consumer via email, confirming that the API is now available for use in the Catalog app. Back in the API Catalog, the consumer can now open the approved API product and generate access credentials, either as an API key or as basic authentication credentials, depending on the configuration defined by the publisher. These credentials can be copied directly from the catalog and used immediately, for example in Postman or within an application connected to the SEEBURGER API Gateway. From this point on, the API is fully active and ready for integration. The publisher has provided it, the administrators have assigned it, and the consumers can securely work with it in real time. The API operator uses the API Monitor app to gain full transparency over all API activities. The dashboard provides a real-time overview of traffic volumes, success rates, and error counts across the APIs deployed on the gateway. When needed, the operator can filter down to a specific API product, seeing exactly how it is being used, which consumers are calling it, and how often. And in case of errors, the monitor provides details on status codes and failed calls, supporting quick troubleshooting and enabling collaboration with publishers or consumers to resolve issues. With the API Monitor app, operators ensure smooth operations and continuous improvement. Together with the publisher and the consumer, they complete the API lifecycle within the SEEBURGER iPaaS solution. So with SEEBURGER API Gateway and API Management, publishers, consumers, and operators all work together on a single secure platform. This completes our walkthrough of the API lifecycle with SEEBURGER iPaaS. You have one platform, one entry point, and a clear path to integrate APIs alongside B2B and EDI. And that's it. From publishing to consuming to monitoring, all in one platform. Now it's your turn to bring your APIs to life, securely, smartly, and maybe even with a smile.